Good day, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning into our conversation. My name is Faye, and I'm the Program Manager for Business for Peace in Oslo, Norway. This will actually be our last short conversation for the year, so a bit sad, but we couldn't think of a better person to round our year off with than with the very inspirational Cecilie Kjelsberg. So thank you so much for coming here today or being with us digitally. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm doing well. The weather is I think it's like the first day of snow today, so that's interesting.
Yes, officially winter.
Officially winter.
Yeah. So Cecilia is the co-founder and CEO of Better Living Projects, which creates job opportunities for women in Indian remote communities by delivering sustainable textile products to the Norwegian market. For this work, she has been nominated as one of the 30 under 30 leading stars by Norwegian business newspaper Dagens Næringsliv. So that's quite an achievement, Cecilia. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And before we start, I have to ask, who are you wearing today?
Oh, that's such a fun way of asking, I guess what you're asking me is who I am or what I'm wearing and how that is me, is part of me and who I am. Yeah, because since I work with Better Living Projects, I feel like I always need to wear ethical clothes. I feel like I am allergic to non-ethical clothing. I cannot, I just cannot make myself buy it. So today I'm wearing this blouse is from a small shop called Studio Bazaar. It's ethically made in India at Santansaugen. The black within is from a swap party, so that was free. I'm wearing pants from Livid, made in Portugal. Very awesome startup. And wool socks.
Okay, of course, needed now for the times, but maybe after our conversation, you can share these links with us so I can share it with our audience members. It's always good to know more sources of sustainable clothing. So that's just
absolutely
great.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, I will also share our products like the tote bags, and we also have beautiful t-shirts now.
Great, thank you. So this was a perfect introduction to our topic today. We will be discussing ethical trade with a focus on the fashion industry. And let's jump right into it. So what are the global challenges that we are facing when it comes to ethical trade in the fashion industry? And how did this inspire you to establish Better Living Projects?
That's a big question, but at least I can give you some introduction about how I got here. Like, how did I end up in the whole movement of making a more sustainable fashion today? And I think as many entrepreneurs, it was many coincidences, but also this will to change an industry. You saw that something was not working and you wanted to change it. And that was the same for me. I was actually working in the development sector before. I did my master's thesis in Nepal and ended up staying there after my thesis. And what really stuck in me, something that I just couldn't get over with, was the women who was poorest, far away from the cities, far away from markets. They really, really struggled with getting a job. And the big development projects, they were doing good things, but they didn't really crack the big problem with getting these families out of poverty, which was that they were really struggling with getting jobs. And the women especially were really disadvantaged in this case because they were discriminated in so many ways. That it was difficult to go to the local market because it was unsafe after it got dark, or the women had so many household chores they didn't even have time. So I think just seeing that it was jobs and income that would have just changed their lives. That's what motivated me to actually start creating jobs for women in India instead of going into the development sector further.
Yes. So perhaps you can tell us then why India and how you got Better Living Project started in India.
So it's a slightly coincidence, you could say, that it turned into it's exactly India, because the sewing center that we started, it's on the border to Nepal.
Yeah.
So it's not far from where I live, and as many others, I was connected with a local team there who really was so passionate about creating jobs for women. And if you're going to start something on the other side of the world where you're not from, you need local community-led projects. I cannot run it from another place. You need locals to actually build it and make it grow. And they were so passionate. I remember thinking they want this as much, or they definitely want this as much as me, and they would be passionate about what they do every day.
Yes.
So I was convinced that because of that, they would do a great job with starting a sewing center for women in this village.
Fantastic. But I mean, as you said, cultural differences, language barriers, I mean, so many different elements. This entire process must not have been easy. Maybe you can say a bit about the challenges that you faced and how you overcame them.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great question because, we entrepreneurs many times we're put in this shiny light, leading stars. It's like so amazing and everything is perfect, but it's really not. You have this big major catastrophe every single day that you just want to hide it under your pillow. But
the life of an entrepreneur, a new challenge to overcome.
Yeah, but you don't really show it outside, So it's such a great question because, to start a sewing center or a business from scratch, both in Norway, because we're selling these sustainable products to businesses here in Norway, right?
Yes.
And building a sewing production in India at the same time. I mean, considering there were so many challenges with just learning how to operate in a different context. It's just easier if I give some examples. I think, for example, we were supposed to export these textile products from the sewing center. The sewing center started with making the tote bags. And then you realize that it takes a very long time to get an export invoice or an export license.
Yes,
sorry.
Yeah.
So the sewing center in itself couldn't do that. So we had to come up with a solution, get a collaboration partner that would help us. And cultural experiences might have been one of the biggest ones where, we had young women about in their early 20s working with us because they're very eager to work. And many of these women, they got married after they started working with us.
Yeah.
And in this culture, you need to marry with someone at least living 10 kilometers away because they're ripping off the attachment with the previous family.
Yeah.
And so the women had to quit, because they were moving into the husband's home. And I think you fail and then you always find solutions, but I think what I learned is that even though you find solutions, there are still a part of the problem that is left. There's always a part of the issue that you're not able to fix probably because I was not there.
Yes, exactly.
And that small issues kind of build up and it creates very difficult ball med tråd.
So I think a ball of problems, let's say.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And I think that's what I learned, that I should have been there much more. I've only been there for every 6 months because I really wanted to make this work locally by themselves. And I was thinking about the climate, but if I'm going to encourage someone else to do this, I would definitely say, live there for a few years, at least in the beginning,
Yes, that was actually what I was going to ask. Next, you have such valuable learning experiences from this. What advice would you give to other people wanting to do the same?
Yeah.
Yes, and I guess being on the ground and getting the local knowledge and understanding the cultural differences and understanding how these challenges, the challenges that can actually come up, and working with the community to solve them is probably one of your biggest takeaways.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can build a little bit on two of the points where, just expect staff turnover, at least in the beginning, at least if it's young women, unmarried women, and then don't rely 100% on one person. Like, for example, we had a sewing teacher in the beginning. She was the only teacher with this skill level in Bodh Gaya, where we work in the northeast of India on the border to Nepal. She was the most skilled, and then she couldn't be part of the project as much anymore because she was running her own tailor businesses, and it was going very well.
Yeah.
So when she left, we had to come up with a whole new initiative of actually training the women. What we had to do was that we we hired consultants that came in for a period of time from New Delhi or Calcutta that had very high skill levels, and then they left again. But that was also quite expensive. So
yes,
just be prepared. And that's also what investors say, everyone has to be replaceable in a company, right?
Yes. But I mean, even with all these challenges, you found a way to overcome them, and it is a business that is up and running. You are producing sustainable products that are sold here in the Norwegian market. So I would say that you are developing, or have developed to some extent, a model for ethical trade. And this is amazing. But how can we get the bigger retailers to think the same way?
Yeah, that's the big question. I actually have a quite good experience in this now because, we are working B2B, so we only sell to businesses and not directly to consumers, just a few collections. And what you realize is how the prices are just so low, right? I mean, incredibly low. And the timelines, for the factories to actually finish, say 100,000 t-shirts, they are so short that the factories are forced to work overtime. They are forced. Even though, the big brands, they can say, please don't work overtime because that will look bad on us. But the problem is the timeline, right? So unless they increase the timeline, but the whole system is built around this timeline because you have 4 seasons, you have different trends, and you need to hit the different trend seasons, right? So if it's delayed, that would create a huge impact on the sales. So the whole system for the big fast fashion brands is destructive, and it will be very difficult for them to change.
Yes, I agree. We need to change the system, but certain events and incidents have happened that could have created a change. I mean, we all know, or maybe I don't know how many people are aware of the Rana Plaza incident. So on the 24th of April 2013, the Rana Plaza building in Bangladesh collapsed, and killing at least 1,132 people and injuring more than 2,500. It housed 5 garment factories, and they were contracted by a number of popular clothing brands. But I mean, I know that after this incident, the Accord on Fire and Building Safety and the Alliance for Bangladesh Worker Safety were established to ensure safer working conditions at the bottom of the supply chain. But you're a person who has been on the ground in this region. Have attitudes toward worker safety actually changed?
Well, I don't work this was in Bangladesh, so I would definitely say that it's a big difference between Bangladesh and India. In India, the worker safety is much better. In Bangladesh, the situation is really bad because the buildings in itself are just really, really poor. And you probably also heard about the fires where the owners of factories, they just create fires so that the buildings will collapse so that they will get the insurance and build a new one. So that's a huge problem in Bangladesh. And I think what was positive about the Rana Plaza incident or collapse is because it reached everyone. I mean, it reached so many. It reached the consumers. And what actually happened was that the big brands, it was different brands that you all know, they kept hiding that they actually produced at these factories. So they didn't go public with it. They didn't say anything. They didn't give any, what was called the
support or financial
support to the families. They just didn't say anything. And then suddenly you find all these hang tags in the ashes. You see who is working there or who is producing there. And then, they go public and they apologize and they give financial support to every single person there. And I think that switch with the consumers, that they understand that something is going on here, that is invaluable. That was a turn in the whole consumer behavior going forward, I think.
Wow, yes. It definitely created much more awareness around the world about what is really happening. And, these industries, they tend to go where the money is. And as you said, fast fashion is in high demand. Textile logistics are characterized by small stocks and short delivery times. So then within that essence, some responsibility must lie on the consumer. We need to change our consumption patterns. But this might be easier said than done because, in many countries and cultures, fashion is a social and cultural statement. It can reflect class and social standing. Used clothing is something that is handed down to lower income families rather than something, that you would seek out to wear. So how do we reach out to consumers and inspire a shift in consumer behavior and patterns, consumption patterns?
Yeah, I guess what you're saying is that fashion is important and it is important to many of us as an identity, right? So it won't be, no one really wants, or few people actually want to just stop shopping. And that, I don't think that's the solution either. We should continue to buy, but we just need to shift what we are buying, right? We need to buy more sustainable clothing and more ethical clothing. And what does that actually mean? What I do, maybe that's easier to explain, is that I go into a shop. First I do is I see what the clothes are made of. So if it's polyester or polyamide, it's plastic. So don't buy that unless you have to. And then I look at the brand. Okay, who is this? Do they work ethically? I would buy from a brand who is explicitly saying that we produce ethically.
Yes.
If they do that and you dig deep, you go on the webpage, they probably do it. Otherwise, they would have gotten negative publicity, or at least they will in the future. And I think also to buy clothes with a story, ethically produced clothes. They normally have a story because the whole brand really cares about all the employees all the way in the back of the value chain. And I just feel that it's so nice to be able to kind of support a whole value chain that is doing it in the right way.
I agree.
And completely. No one wants to support slavery, right?
No.
We know that many of these huge factories, they don't even pay overtime. So if a person works without pay, it's the definition of modern slavery, right?
Exactly. So, yes, and I agree. We do need to shift or change the way that we buy. And I mean, maybe this change has already started. According to a recent study by McKinsey this year, 57% of respondents surveyed have made significant changes to their lifestyles to lessen their environmental impact. And more than 60% report going out of their way to recycle and purchase products in environmentally friendly packaging. And this includes clothing as well. And I mean, we have seen fashion brands and retail giants step up their game. So for example, Zalando, a German online retail company, they recently launched their own sustainable private label. So from 2020, all products from that label would contain at least 50% of a more sustainable material or at least 20% recycled content. So there are examples that change is happening, but is this change happening fast enough?
Yeah, and I think I don't know Zalando. I cannot really go say that that's ethical. But I think there are many great examples like Yarnia, you know, they are skipping the isopor on their grill packaging, going over to recycled paper. And it's, I think it is going in the right direction overall. You know, we can say that there is it's a systemic, we need to see a systemic change, and that will take time. But my observation is that it has started, not only for the business in itself and the changes that they have to do, but also in the consumer. So I think we just need to also remember that, yes, the consumers need to change their behavior, and we basically need to feel in our hearts, you know, what do we want to wear? That is crucial. But at the same time, I think it's the companies who has to lead the change. It's the brands or the retailers or whomever is producing the goods or delivering the goods. They are the ones who has to take the responsibility.
Right. And I mean, if I walk into a store, I'm doing some online shopping and I see clothing labeled with the sustainable tag or with a story as to why this product is sustainable or ethical, then I would of course be more encouraged to purchase that.
Yeah, absolutely. We also do that on our hang tag. We have a picture of Rupa, one of our employees, and it's just something about the personal connection with the people. You know, there's people making these clothes.
Exactly.
I don't know the percentages. Most of the clothes, they are still made with hands, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And bag and tote bags also.
Yes, and I mean, when having this conversation, we can't avoid speaking about the impact of COVID-19. And I mean, the pandemic, it has had devastating impacts on our societies and economies. But some argue that this is, in fact, the wake-up call that we need. So I would actually like to read a quote to you from an online fashion magazine, and I would love to hear your thoughts about it. So here we go. As the coronavirus upends the global economy, the fashion industry has begun to appreciate the importance of a resilient, flexible, and dependable supply chain. This may inspire a movement to bring supply chains back home via onshoring and nearshoring. The result, which is more oversight and control of production, creates a unique opportunity for sustainability in fashion. Could this pandemic motivate a supply chain shift that gives sustainable fashion just the push it needs to become the norm? So is this the way forward for the industry as a whole, given everything that is happening?
So I think it's just like a mind thought of to remember, you know, is that we had most textile industry was in the Western world just like 100 years ago, 150 years ago. Most of the factories were here. They were very local. But the working conditions was terrible here too. And what I find interesting is that we did not learn from those mistakes. I mean, it was the exact same problems here. if you read about working conditions, neglect, and I think still, you know, clothes has reduced in price with 50% since 1995.
Wow.
Like
that is
what happened there?
Yeah.
Who is taking the cost?
Yeah.
It's the factories.
Yes.
The factories are the ones who's taking the cost. And that's why it's so, when I hear this quote, I'm thinking that they're encouraged, that they're kind of implying that the solution is to move production back to closer to home.
Yes.
But it was like that 100 years ago. And I think we will still continue to produce in more low and middle income countries and production countries like China and India. It won't, like, maybe some production will move, but on the overall, it will definitely be huge production there too. And I think we shouldn't just take this easy and think that the problems are over. Yeah. Because what we have seen, which I think is more positive, and maybe I think that is more kind of the solution, or a better way of looking at it, is that every industry is becoming more sustainable. And that also accounts for in the textile industry. Companies and brands are taking more responsibility to shift towards a more sustainable production. And I think that's where we should put our focus, because it's so positive, because you don't feel like you're taking risks alone. You know that all the other brands are also taking risks right now.
Exactly.
And I think to know that you are in an industry which is innovating, that is disrupting, that also encourages all of us to do it. If you don't do it, you will go bankrupt over the next 20 years or something,
Yes, and then the environmental and social consequences for us all will just be devastating. So yeah, we have to do it.
I think actually, if I'm going to give like a concrete advice to companies and brands, or what I would encourage all companies to do, is to actually have a more personal relationship with your producer or with your factory. Yes. And collaborate closer together in a more humble and personal way. Become friends if you're not already, because what we just realized is that if you have that strong bond with the factory, with the supply chain, you can work together towards social impact and sustainability. So recently we don't only work with our Little Swing Center, we also have 2 small, very ethical factories in south of Delhi. And one of them is very focused on gender equality. It's led by a woman. The other one is very ethical. And so we wanted to work with them because they were super ethical, but they're still not gender equal. Yes. And so I've talked with him about this for the few months that I've been working with him. And I said, is there any way that you can hire more women? Is there any way? And what he said was, it's difficult to find women. It's difficult to hire them because there's not so many. And women cannot carry textiles, big rolls of textiles up the stairs because they don't have an elevator. And I said, oh, okay. So what if I help you to what's called the headhunter script? Yeah. Look for candidates.
Find a yeah.
Because I know they're out there. They probably just need. I know that there are women textile workers in Delhi, and then I said, and also here in Norway, women they carry very heavy textiles. It's a very normal, and women are very strong. We carry babies, give birth, and I didn't push. I just took time, and then suddenly he had hired 2 more women.
Wow.
Yeah.
So all it needs is, just the will and the time and the patience to look for the right candidates that you need. Yeah.
Yeah, and probably also for the company to decide what kind of sustainability factor or what they care about, and communicate it to the value chain or supply chain. This is what I care about. Is there something we could do together here?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, what I'm getting from this, Cecilia, is that there is hope. People are making the change, customers and the industry as a whole. It'll take a bit of time.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Absolutely.
because of people like you and other social entrepreneurs taking up the good fight, we're on a good track. So so that's great. Do you have any last thoughts or inspirations that you would like to leave us with?
I mean, I think we could just remember my favorite quote is that no one is free while others are oppressed. And I think we can, that clothes are a good example of that, you know, because other people made our clothes and we would be happy if they were happy. We are sad if they are sad. That's just how it is to be a person and a human.
Yes.
So maybe think about that next time you buy clothes.
Perfect. And with that, I would like to say, Cecilia, thank you very much again for your time. Your work
Thank you, likewise.
Your work is very inspirational at the very least, and we hope that others will follow suit. We wish you and Better Living Projects all the best in the future.
Thanks.
And no problem. For those of you who tuned in, thank you for joining us. Feel free to leave your questions or feedback in the comment section. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes, thank you. Bye.
Bye.